So yeah, ancient India, and ancient India, of course, is one of the four early river valley civilizations that we've talked about before. I think we've already kind of mentioned at this point. We've already done two of them, right? We did Mesopotamia first, then we did Egypt. So I did those two. And of course, we're going to do India. And then next week, I'm going to move on to talk about China. That's my other plan to do. So it's probably going to take today and Wednesday to get through discussing ancient India. So today I'll mostly talk about the background of India, some of the early civilizations that come in, such as the Indus and also the Aryan civilization that comes in. Excuse me. And then I'll talk about religion as well. Now, you can see this map here I've got in that slide. And let me see if I have another one to show you as well. There's that one and then this one. Actually, I've got multiple ones that I've got, but you can see where the Indus Valley civilization was in ancient times. And kind of congested a lot today. I haven't been feeling well for some reason. But anyway, it's not the coronavirus though. But anyway, so the Indus Valley civilization was located where Pakistan mostly is. Although it went from Afghanistan, Pakistan, and then parts of northern India as well, like up in here. And mostly ancient India itself, which I'll get to later, is mostly made up of two areas, which is the Indus, and of course they also have the Ganges River Valley. We'll talk about the Indus Valley civilization later, but predominantly India itself is from here, from where Pakistan is, all the way to the Himalayas, where the Ganges River is, which empties out into the Bay of Bengal. So this whole huge area here, it's kind of like a diamond-shaped area in South Asia. It's basically where ancient India was, like a long time ago. And kind of talk about India. So you got that little banner there right there to show you again. So yeah, Indus River mostly in Pakistan, although the northern parts, kind of like in the northern part of India as well, where it begins. And then the Ganges is more like in eastern India. And then also Bangladesh, which is on the eastern side of India, which broke away from India in 1947. India itself is population-wise, it's pretty large. It's got the second largest population in the world. I think it's like 1.3 billion people. That's how big it is. Come on in, hey. And 1.2 million square miles. That's about the size of ancient India, which India's other name it goes by is Bharat, Bharat. And that's an ancient name of India, which dates back to one of their ancient kings. So often it's called Republic of India, but in India they call it often Bharat or Bharata is the common name. India is about a third the size of the United States. So that'd be like an equal way to kind of compare, the United States to India itself. And it's located in the southern part of Asia. And I'll talk about it later. It does have a nickname that they often call it. But later, India broke up. I'll get to India later. India's made up of like multiple areas. Pakistan, all the way to Bangladesh. There's even a little island that's off the coast of India as well, called Sri Lanka, which you may have heard of. Also, India has a nickname. They call it the subcontinent, or also known as the subcontinent of India. And the reason why it's called that, is because India is subdivided by a bunch of mountains, mostly the Himalayas. And India itself is so large, it looks like a separate continent. So they kind of call it that, like a subcontinent. So the name kind of stuck over time. So a lot of people call it the subcontinent of India, so to speak. So it's like a subdivision of Asia. The mountains that separate it are mostly two. You've got the Hindu Kush mountains, which are around Pakistan. And these, of course, are kind of northwest of India. I think I saw them go into like also Afghanistan as well. But it's northwest of India. And then also to the north, they have the Himalayas or Himalayan mountains that they've got, which are more dominant. Those two kind of help to kind of separate India from the rest of the, I guess, of Asia overall. And I'll get to it later, but there's various passes that go through the Hindu Kush. Like there's one called the Khyber Pass you've probably heard of, which is like an invasion route and highway system and trade route that runs through there. It was the main way that most people got into India a long time ago. I think it's how Osama bin Laden got into Pakistan or something. I don't know, maybe. But then to the east, I think of India, there's like a lot of jungles and stuff in swampy regions, like around the Ganges River basin and its delta. So it's kind of hard to get into India, unless you go through those passes of the Hindu Kush, and so on. I got a map showing you. Let me see if I can find it here. But there's a map. Where is it? Right here. There it is, right there. One showing like India, like in the area of India, where modern India is in the middle. You see the Republic of India, and all the land around it, not including China, was an area that was most of where ancient China was a long time ago. Yeah, that's the areas that mostly made up ancient India a long time ago. So you got the Republic of India in the middle, in that kind of whitish, grayish area. To the northwest, you've got Pakistan, which broke away from India in 1947, so-called partition of India. This happened after the British Empire started breaking up. Nepal to the north, you can see mostly in the Himalayas, I think was at one point part of India. Bhutan's up here. It's kind of hard to see, but Bhutan's like right above Bangladesh. And then Bangladesh is east of India. And then you got, there's one more, which is on the bottom, which is Sri Lanka. You can't, let me take that off there. Sri Lanka's right here. They also used to call it Ceylon, Ceylon. I think was another way they spelled it. Call it Sri Lanka now. So all that was kind of like part of the ancient Indian world, like a long time ago. But since it's broken up into all these different countries that are there now today. Let me get into more agricultural, some of the geographical agricultural stuff, of course, of India that are kind of important as well. Let me back up to this slide here. There's a thing here called the Indus-Ganges plain, which it's called different names. They call it sometimes the Indo-Gangetic plain, I think is another common name that they dub it. I think I've got a slide showing that too, if I can find it, which is right here. It's that area that's in the northern part of India. It kind of starts in Pakistan and it goes all the way to like where Bangladesh and maybe Bhutan is in that area. So that kind of like that more yellow areas. That's the floodplain of where the Indus and the Ganges rivers basically is and was before ancient times, includes their tributaries, etc. You can see it's a very populated area. It's got like about 1 billion people living there. That's a lot in that one small area. I think the actual area is about 630 million acres of land. That's kind of right there in that area. So that's a lot of people living in a small area. You got New Delhi, I know, is probably one of the most populated cities that's probably in that northern part in India. So yeah, it's about 2,000 miles. So if from where around the Indus River is, Pakistan, going all the way to I guess where the Ganges River Delta is, yeah, it's about 2,000 miles long, that whole area. Now, why was that area important a long time ago? A long time ago, that's where agriculture started, they believe, especially in the western part of it, like around the Indus River. They think farming started there. It's kind of a debate about when it started, but maybe 5,000 to 7,000 BC. It's maybe when they start farming in the Indus River Valley during the so-called Neolithic period. And then what happened was farming then spread from like the western part to the eastern part of the Indus Ganges plain area. And then, of course, they say that also the first civilization started there too as well. So you have the first people civilized there, which I'll get to later, like the Indus people or Indus Valley civilization was believed to have started in the western part of it, where the Indus River basin is. So that's basically why that area is important. It's still important today, because of farming. I think that's where their chief, agriculture is in modern India today, and Pakistan and so on. And like I said, a lot of people live there, like 1 billion people, maybe more now, since I saw that statistic a while back. So there's an area that's kind of south of it. It's kind of like hard to see, but it's like that orange area that's on the bottom of that picture of India. You can see, because India is like a diamond-shaped peninsula, but it's kind of in the middle of the peninsula. Basically, it's called the Deccan Plateau, so they called it. It's kind of a flat plateau area, which goes from like north to south. Like it's right. It starts like right below, I guess, where the Indus Ganges plain ends, and I think it starts like right, basically like up in this area, goes down toward the sea, is what it is, and I think in the northern part of it, it's like 3,000 feet above sea level. And then as it gets down toward the coast, it's like a couple hundred, maybe 300 feet above sea level, basically. So like the coastal areas of India, especially on the bottom, are very close to sea level. The northern part of India is more mountainous and hilly as you get more north and all that. Another thing I need to talk about also is like the whole like seasons that they have in India. India is a little different than us. Like we have we got summertime and we got the hurricane season, right? Then our winter's kind of mild here. They have like a rainy season, and they got a dry season. They call it the so-called monsoon season or monsoon seasons. Really is what it is. There's really two of them. And the one they have that's the most famous one that they've got is the so-called summer monsoon, which they also call it the so-called southwest monsoon. I think that's the common name that meteorologists call it today. And they call it the southwest monsoon because what happens in the summertime, usually from about, I think it peaks about June, July to about September. So we're getting ready to go into October, so the monsoon season is starting to end over there. But it's this rainy seasons that they have in like parts of Asia and Africa. And it brings in all these torrential rains throughout those months. They call it the southwest monsoon because the winds come from like the southwest off the Indian Ocean. It brings in all the rainstorms. The monsoons were very important and still is today because it brings the majority of their precipitation. It says up there 80% of the rain that falls during the year falls during the monsoon season. So that was important for agriculture, growing crops and all that, water for cattle, whatever. And so if they didn't get enough like rain, that could affect their growing season and they might have famines. I believe what I've researched before about modern India today is that they're not getting enough rain like they should. Uh, However, it does cause flooding. Well, if you know much about this, monsoons, like especially I know along the Indus River, like in Pakistan, they always have flooding. Um, I think one of my wife has a friend that's in India. She knows she worked with years ago, and she's always think they always text email back about different things over there. So just tell me, I gotta go to work and it's like flood all over the place. So it's kind of like, yeah, they still have that problem, of course, today. So that's hadn't changed in thousands of years and all that. Oh, the kind of crops they grew, by the way, that should be India, was cotton, rice, and of course barley, wheat. Those kind of grains are the kind of crops they were known for. Of course, cotton was used to make cloth, which they were known for like dye cloth and things like that. As examples. So that's something that they're kind of known for. In ancient India, that cotton. Which I think cotton kind of originated kind of in that area and spread to the other parts of the world later. All right, so just that's enough looking about the background of India. They do have other things that happen too. Weather-wise as well. You sometimes see, like us, we have hurricanes. They get hit by cyclones once in a while. They'll have one come up into the Indian Ocean and hit them, but it's kind of rare. Sometimes they had that tsunami they had like a few years ago. It was that 2004 tsunami. I don't know if you remember that. Boxing Day tsunami. You heard about that? It was awful. They kind of hit that area. I know Sri Lanka, I think, was one area that got hit by it in east coast of India. So they sometimes get tsunamis, here and there if they get like earthquakes and stuff like that. All right, moving on. Let me go, of course, next into the big thing we need to talk about today, which is the Indus civilization. And the Indus civilization was considered to be the oldest civilization in India. They call it the Indus Valley civilization. That's the common full name that they dub it. And yeah, it's one of the oldest. I think it dates back to over 5,000 years ago. So I would probably put it, in the same time period as ancient Mesopotamia, because Mesopotamia developed, like the Sumerians, developed like 3,000 to 4,000 BC. So they think that the Indus culture likely developed about the same time. It was a Bronze Age culture that was primarily around Pakistan along the Indus River Valley, which is why they, call it that. It's why it's called Indus Valley civilization. I'll explain the other name, Harappan, in a second about that. They think that this civilization was very comparable to the Sumerians. Like even their cities were kind of like mud brick cities, like you see like and Iraq and Eridu and other cities we kind of may have mentioned before about that. And there's not a whole lot known about the culture. I think mostly what they know about is from archaeology, because they found a language that the Indus people had, but they can't translate it. So they don't really know too much about it. But it is called Harappan civilization. I'll kind of explain a little bit later more about that one, but it's named after like an old ancient city there's a found near a site called Harappa, Pakistan, which used to be India. And so they call it Harappa or Harappan. And then later, because they found all these settlements all around the Indus River Valley, they started calling it Indus instead. If you go back to this map here I showed you, I think right here, it was showing like India. That's where they think it was. The Indus Valley civilization was like around the Indus River Valley, but they do think it was in Afghanistan, Pakistan, and then parts of northern India at one point. So kind of going up into the Himalayas and Hindu Kush area, and then down to where the Arabian Sea is. So may have been a pretty populated civilization, they think, that had millions of people living there, I think, at one point, like maybe in Mesopotamia. I think I've got a slide here with some more information about it. They actually discovered it first in the 1850s. Looks like a railroad crew discovered it by accident. However, they didn't really start really like investigating more into like the culture itself, like excavations at different settlements that were there in that region in Pakistan now until like around World War One. So 1910s, 1920s. That's when they think. I think it was mostly the British and British archaeologists that kind of started kind of getting a lot of interest in it originally. Yeah, it may have had a population of 5 million. That's a lot at that time. So it may have been one of the most populated civilizations so far in history, as far as they know. They found a lot of settlements. I think it's like, I want to say over 1,000 settlements have been found, like in and around the Indus River Valley. I think over 100 something of them may have been, they started to excavate overall. Harappa, I think around the 1920s, was one of the first that they really began to really get more into. Yeah, so like the first discoveries like 1800s, and then archaeologists started really coming in around World War One, investigating more of it. But Harappa was the one that they went to first and started doing excavations there. Harappa was like 30, 40,000 population wise. It's a mud brick city that's located. If you go in that map there, it's located, it's kind of hard to see, but it's up in the northern part of Pakistan, an area that they call the Punjab region, Punjab, Punjab. It's like in the main tributaries of the Nile, of the Indus River basin. So they found that one first. And so because of it, they started using the term Harappan to describe the civilization of the Indus people. And then they started finding more of them, and all of that. And so they just call it Indus because it's like all throughout the Indus River Valley and so on. And there was one they found that's very famous that's called Mohenjo-Daro. That's the one that's the largest settlement they've been able to discover and excavate, which I think that one may have been closer to 40,000 in population. It's located near Sindh, I think Pakistan. It's located more in the southern part of Pakistan, more down near closer to the mouth of the Indus River. And the name Mohenjo-Daro is a name that means either hill of the dead or mound of the dead. They called it that because I think when they were doing excavations, they found mass graves of people that were buried there. So they kind of gave it that name, mound of the dead or hill of the dead. So that's what Mohenjo-Daro means. It's like Darby's coming in. And anyway, so that's what that was. And what they found with these cities, they were pretty large in size. Like that one, he says 3 square miles. It's pretty large of a city. Most of them, like in the video, said, that they were built in kind of a grid system, like where the streets crisscross and the buildings connect and all that. And they had all kinds of technology. They got kind of a list of them there I can kind of give you. But they had a language, which they call it either Indus script or Harappan script. And it's a language that they have not been able to decipher. It was mostly written on tablet form. They think it might be related to a language that's called Dravidian that is still spoken in India, especially in southern India. And so some people think it's somehow related to that, but nobody's been able to translate it, which is a problem. So if they could translate, they could find out more about, India and all that. It has private wells as well. They dug wells for water. They do have baths. That's the one thing I will talk about later, which is very famous. Probably the most famous thing about Mohenjo-Daro is a famous bath they have that you may have heard of. That's well known. They found sewage and drainage systems. So when it would rain, water would drain away from the city like we do in cities and neighborhoods today. They had some kind of sewage system that drained sewage. They did have flush toilets, which you think, hey, that's crazy back then. But actually, a lot of civilizations had stuff like this, plumbing and things like that. Like the Romans had lead plumbing which is not good, I guess. But they had lead plumbing and stuff like that, and they think they had a trade network where they probably trade with areas of Afghanistan, likely Mesopotamia, and so on. Yeah, there are evidence of granary sites too that they found where they store grain all year round. Metal work, like they work with gold, silver, lead, tin, copper, bronze, the kind of metals that they had overall. They do think they had a strong central government, as far as they could tell, but they don't know much about it and all that. But all their cities were kind of built kind of similar. So you have to wonder if there was some kind of city planning involved in the construction, of their cities and so on. Let me see. There's a picture here. I'll show you real quick. I think I've got different pictures of Mohenjo-Daro. There was the one at the one right there, of course. That just shows you like the reconstruction of it. So that's how they think it looked. They do think they had multi-story buildings, so more than one story involved. There was some kind of citadel that they constructed, which helped guard the city, as far as they know. So they must have been involved in various conflicts with other peoples that were nearby. Maybe the cities didn't get along and fought with each other, and so on. Of course, the most famous thing, of course, about Mohenjo-Daro is its famous bath that you see here. Of course, that's one of the two big famous things at Mohenjo-Daro that they discovered is the Great Bath. And it's been a debate about what it was used for. It was considered maybe one of the first actual public baths ever constructed. Whether it was heated, they think it may have been, as far as they know. They think it may have been part of a temple structure. So some kind of building that it was, part of. You can see some columns that are kind of around it. And the theory they have is that it was used for some kind of religious ritual purposes. Because, in Hinduism, they do that kind of stuff where they maybe go to where the Ganges River is, pilgrimages, and they bathe in the river and do ritualistic things like that. And so that may have been part of that, but they're not sure about the organized religion thing. That's kind of still debated. Had another picture too with that background I had earlier, but it was kind of fuzzy. But the citadel, of course, is the other famous thing that's big with Mohenjo-Daro. So it's kind of a debate about what they use that for, but likely as part of a fortification is probably what it was for. Right. The other thing, of course, we can talk about is, what happened to the Indus people? Because they think maybe close to the, 18th and 19th century or so, or maybe later, they think that the Indus people declined all of a sudden. And it's been very much compared with other cultures. I don't know if you know much about this, but they think it was these people, the way they declined anyway, was often compared to the Mayan. The Mayan culture declined in Mesoamerica, or the Minoans just snuffed out overnight, maybe by a volcano or something. So there's a lot of mystery about those two cultures. Well, the same thing with the Indus civilization. It's a big debate about what happened to their culture. So there's all kinds of theories that they've put forth about this culture that I think I've got a few theories I can put up there. For climate's been one of the things, of course, they've talked about. Climate change, could have been it. Combination of maybe the monsoon changed, like not enough rain, or maybe the opposite, where it was flooded a lot. That could happen too. Likely lack of rain is probably what it is. Of course, and lack of rain could have caused the river to change. Maybe flooding caused the change. So it's kind of a debate about, which it was and all that. But I know that's the big thing. Climate change has been one thing they've talked about, which the river shifting and things like that could have caused it a long time ago. Kind of like if the Mississippi River shifted, say the Mississippi River shifted and went down the Atchafalaya. Imagine what would happen to Baton Rouge. as a city. They would probably abandon that. It wouldn't be as big of a port anymore, would it? That's where a lot of our economy comes from, is that and the petrochemical. All these corporations they have up and down the river. They'd be out of business. So. The other popular theory that's big, is the Aryan invasion theory that they always talk about. Of course, I think I've got a picture showing that the Aryan invasion. Let me see, I got there. Yeah, that right there. I don't know if it's a good picture, but there's like a theory that at one point the Aryan peoples, Indo-Aryan peoples, whatever you want to call them, migrated from an area which is it's kind of like now in southern Russia or close to southern Russia. It's about where it is. It's kind of between Europe and Asia where it is. I sometimes say Eurasia because it's like between it. Because like this is like Eastern Europe, like above the Black Sea, that's Eastern Europe, but above the Caspian Sea is Western Asia. It's kind of weird, but it's kind of like smack dab in the middle of like right between Asia and Europe. So it's like the southern part of Russia where a lot of the Aryan or Caucasian peoples migrated from. And you can see some went westward into Europe, some went down into like Turkey, some went into Iran. And then you got a bunch of them that go down into eventually India. And the ones that go into India are usually referred to as Indo-Aryans. And the ones that went into Iran, I may have told you before, are called Indo-Iranians. So they're kind of like cousins of each other. The peoples that are in, I guess, around Iran, the people in Pakistan and northern India, whatever, that were there later, are kind of somehow related to each other. So they look kind of similar, maybe. And it's believed that most of these peoples came down through the Khyber Pass, which I think I've got a picture of the Khyber Pass, which is right here, which I told you is that main pass that's running through the Hindu Kush Mountains, which are to the northwest of India. It's about 33 miles long, the Khyber Pass. And the Khyber Pass has been it's been like a trade route, invasion route for thousands of years. People have kind of gone back and forth through that pass, forever. Besides the Aryans, you've had Alexander the Great invaded through there. You've had the Mongols, Muslim invaders that have come down through the pass and all of that to get into India. So it's a major route between west to east, going from, I guess, Western Asia into Southern Asia. And supposedly the word Khyber is a word that means fort, so fort pass, because they would put forts on top of the pass to guard it, which is, gives you an advantage. So when some people come down through the pass, they'd shoot down at you, and stuff like that. So I know the British went through there. I'm reading a book, was Winston Churchill, I think, writing about that area or something like that, talking about the Khyber Pass, and the British went in there eventually and tried to take it over and all that. But anyway, so it's been a major route from pretty much west to east, going into India and all of that. Let's talk about the Aryans, like who they are in people. So let me talk about that culture a little bit. So the Aryan, so-called Aryan civilization, or Indo-Aryan people that end up in India. The term Aryan is a Sanskritic word. I'll talk about Sanskrit later. It was a Sanskritic word that either translates as meaning either freeborn or born of noble birth. So they came from the upper class. And the Aryans were believed to be a very nomadic people, very warlike too, by the way. And they're armed with iron weapons, brought in like, pretty much the war chariot or chariot was introduced to India by, the Aryans when they came in from the north and all that. Mostly they would settle into like Pakistan and northern India. And So like I said, the proper term for the Aryans that do settle in India and Pakistan are mostly Indo-Aryan. That's the proper term, but some people just shorten the term to Aryan. And you probably know today they often confuse that whole thing, the term Aryan, with the Nazis, right? You remember the Nazis and the so-called Aryan race, that Hitler always talked about, blonde hair, blue eyes, and stuff like. Of course, the Aryans weren't blonde hair, blue eyes, like most of them, but I think most of them had dark hair, brown eyes, I think. But I think it's believed that somehow the Aryans that the Germans are talking about are somehow descended from them that end up in Europe, and they're supposed to be this advanced race of Germans or humans. I don't know, they call it Superman or something like that, that kind of deal. Supermensch, I think is what the Nazis call them or something like that. But that's all been perverted, and so on. So the term Aryan we're talking about is just the proper term that they sometimes call Caucasian people, But they use the term Indo-European for those that end up in, of course, in Europe. Some other stuff that's important too about the Aryans. The Aryans would bring in a language that's called Sanskrit. You probably heard of it. Sanskrit's an Indo-Aryan language, one of the oldest in the world, which dates about circa 1500 BC. So it's like basically over 3 to 4,000 years old, Sanskrit. So it is one of the oldest languages. That's an Indo-Aryan language, like one of the oldest. And it is the mother language of pretty much of most languages in India, minus English. And a lot of your various dialects in India, like Indic type dialects, are somehow related to Sanskrit a long time ago. One more other thing, too, that the Aryans brought in that's very famous. They brought in what they call the Vedas or Veda, which are these religious scriptures or texts that were written in Sanskrit. It's like the oldest thing written probably in the world in like an Indo-Aryan language. And these scriptures are like the basis of what would be the Hindu theology or of Hinduism that'll develop in ancient and modern India. And it was believed to be knowledge, quote, knowledge, which is what the word meant, Vedas or Veda, that the gods gave them, like the Aryans, I guess, when they came into India, talking about their gods and their theological ideas, like reincarnation. Supposedly that idea came out of it as an example. And these Vedas are pretty old. The one that's the oldest is called the Rig Veda, which that one dates back the furthest, which is like, I want to say, it probably dates back to 1500 BC. Although they do think the Vedas were oral in tradition. I think that the theory about it is that they were chanted by priests from memory, and then over time, they were translated during a period called the Vedic Age, it's sometimes called, which starts about 1500 BC and maybe goes down to close to 500 BC. So they started translating them. And you can see that they have over 20,000 verses in them, which each verse is called a mantra. And I believe that the Rig Veda, which is the oldest of the four you see there, has like half of them. I think it's got a little over 11,000 verses in it. And so it's the longest one, but it's also the oldest as well. So yeah, Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda. Those are the four Veda which are still around. There are a few others later that are written, like the Upanishads and Upanishads. Those are just subdivisions of the Vedas which were written down later. Maybe 500 to 1,000 BC, in that range. They may have been written at one point. So all of that, the Vedas that were brought in by the Aryans, that became the basis of the Hindu religion and the Hindu theology that will come later. And that's what I wanted to talk about next. I'll go ahead and talk about that a little bit. and that probably will be it lecture-wise, that I'll kind of go into and just cover some of the basic religious beliefs of Hinduism that they have. And let's first talk about, of course, Hinduism itself. Hinduism, of course, started in ancient India a long time ago, like several thousand years ago. Hinduism is one of the oldest religions in the world. It's like, I forget how old it is exactly, but it's at least 3,000 to 4,000 years old. So it's up there with Judaism and Zoroastrianism. Just, I guess they're still around and all that. Yeah, it's based on the Vedas, scriptures that were brought in by the Aryans. And then some of the big theological ideas that dominate it is the idea of dharma and karma, which you probably heard of. And it is one of those religions that believes heavily in reincarnation, that your soul gets reborn after you die. And it's very similar to like Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, and so on. Similar religions that are also in that part of Asia. And it does have a name that they actually call it in the East, like around South Asia. They often call it Sanatana Dharma, which has different translations. It can mean eternal way or eternal righteousness, eternal life. And that's because of the belief in the idea of reincarnation. I think it's part of it right there, especially if you follow certain dharma. And it's practiced by over 1 billion people. I think it's 1.25 billion maybe practice it throughout the world. It is the third largest religion in the world. You can see on the right, that's where it's most dominant. I think where it's like greenish looking in that color, that's where it's mostly dominant, which obviously I think most of the people that are Hindu mostly live in India about. And you can see all the areas where it's kind of into it's pretty much, they have pretty much all these cities, these countries that are in this list have some people that are Hindu. Pakistan has of some, not many. Sri Lanka's got some, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Indonesia, all these different countries have some people are Hindu, but they're mostly a minority in most of those countries. So I thought there was one more that had I forget which one it was. Is it Bangladesh? One of those two. I forget which one it was. One of them had another one, which I think is the one, which I think is, I think it's Bhutan. I thought it was Bangladesh or one of those has a majority too. But anyway, let's get into some of the religious beliefs, of course, about Hinduism. Hinduism, of course, doesn't have a founder, if you know about this, like most other religions. It's based off of religious ideas that evolved over time. And one of their chief beliefs that they do believe in is the idea of Brahman, which is kind of hard to describe. What Brahman is, the best way to describe it would be that Brahman is the ultimate reality of the whole universe, like the entire universe. Some people see it as a supreme being, although not really. It's more like the whole universe is like a soul, or everything is part of that soul, which is in nature. So basically, anything from all living things and souls to all like objects, like this desk right here or whatever I'm sitting at is basically all part of Brahman. So everything is part of one big, huge universe in general. Some people do see it as kind of like this huge supreme being, where it's the whole universe is like a god maybe, but it's more like almost like a huge soul of everything that's together as one. So it's really hard to describe the meaning of it, like what it is. But oftentimes they'll sit there and say that Brahman is the ultimate ground of all being in the universe. Is sometimes what they'll actually say. Another belief they have is called Atman, which I think I've got a slide on that too. Is what, yeah, Atman. Atman is this belief that all living things have like a soul, and that could be from human form down to smaller living things, animals, insects, even, believe it or not, mosquitoes, worms. So it's believed that everything has some kind of soul, or the word Atman can mean self in Sanskrit as well. Everything's all connected to Brahman as part of the whole universe in general. Then, of course, they believe also in the idea of reincarnation. That's this belief that everything goes through a cycle of life and death. You know, you're born, you live your life, you die, and then what happens, you get reborn again into another living thing, and you start the cycle over again. You live your life, you die, and you get reborn. And this could go on forever. And of course, the actual cycle, or what they call internal cycle of reincarnation, is called samsara. S-A-M-S-A-R-A, as you see there. So that's what that is, the difference between reincarnation and samsara. So how long can this go on? Nobody knows. Forever. You could be reincarnating, living thousands of lives, and you never know it. So that kind of deal. So it's quite different from the West, like the Western perspective, like especially like, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, one dies. The idea is that you go to like a heaven or hell, mostly. I think Catholics still believe in the purgatory, I guess, thing as well, but totally different from some of these Eastern religions. They believe a lot of this in Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, etc., that these things happen over time. So-called reincarnation. And some people in the West believe, like there are some people that are, Christian or some other religion that kind of actually believe that kind of idea. So sometimes. Other things that kind of, course, can influence, like what are things that can influence reincarnation? Of course, karma is one of the big things I always talk about, of course, in Hinduism and Buddhism, etc. Actions or deeds, things that you do throughout your life can have an effect on your present life, like later in your life, or even your next life. So what comes around goes around, as they say. And so it's kind of like a cause and effect, where basically you've got bad karma versus good karma. So you do something bad in your life, what could happen is that you could have some bad rebirths, and then if you do a lot of good things, good effects, whatever, actions, deeds, that could affect good births, good rebirths down the line. So that's something that they always talk about. Sometimes the word karma, the best word is really your destiny, is really what it really is. So your destiny, your future of what's going to happen later in your life or your next life. Of course, another thing that can influence also reincarnation is dharma, which is pretty important in Hinduism, and also especially the Buddhism, it's big. They always talk about the 8 dharma in Buddhism. That's one's right way of living, like how you live your life as a person, following various laws of the state. It could be religious type laws, duties, moral or ethical obligations, conduct in society, how you treat yourself and treat others, virtues. So all those kind of things can affect your life as well, like your future life and also your next life as well. So this is common in Hinduism, common in Buddhism, common in Jainism, and also Sikhism as well. So all those types of Eastern religions overall. Now, they do have what they call moksha, which moksha is this idea that eventually your soul will stop reincarnating, the cycle of samsara, of life and death and all that will eventually end. Your soul gets liberated, that kind of thing. And they think that this idea is very equivalent to in Buddhism and Jainism. They have what they call nirvana, you probably heard of, or maybe heard the rock band, Nirvana. But that's basically, where it's kind of similar. So they're not quite the same, but they think it's similar. But it's the same idea, that your soul will get liberated and you'll stop reincarnating. And I know Dharma is one of the key things in doing that. Well, there's other things too, in Hinduism, but I'm talking about the main ones overall. All right, a few minutes here. I guess I can go ahead and review real quick if you want. I can do that real quick if you want, real quick. And then I guess on Wednesday's class, I'll try to wrap up India is what we'll do. So quickly, I'll go through here real quick. So it's around what two major river valleys did ancient India develop around? Of course, the two I told you are the Indus River and the Ganges River, which I've kind of talked about before already in previous lectures. What mountain ranges north and northwest of India subdivide it all from the rest of Asia? That, of course, is the to the north, you got the Himalayas. So that's northwest, close to Pakistan, Afghanistan. You've got the Hindu Kush, where the Khyber Pass is. Why is India known as a subcontinent or subcontinent of India? It's called this because India is kind of subdivided from Asia, mostly by mountains that are like above it. So if you look at it from outer space, it looks like a peninsula with mountains around it at the top. What present states are part of ancient India? Well, obviously, the Republic of India is the main one. Pakistan, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and also Sri Lanka was, I think, all kind of part of the same area at one point. What was the Indus-Ganges Plain, or also called Indo-Gangetic Plain? That was the fertile river valleys of the Indus-Ganges rivers, which are in northern India. Goes from Pakistan to Bangladesh. It's the most fertile area of that part of India. It's where agriculture started. It's also where civilization started, especially in the Indus Basin. The Deccan Plateau is a kind of a flat plateau area that's in the southern western part of India. It's an area that's kind of separated from the Indus-Ganges Plain, which is right above it. It goes down to the bottom of the peninsula of India. Monsoon season, how does it affect the climate? The monsoon season, of course, they have like a rainy season, often called the summer monsoon, or I told you the southwest monsoon. That's where they have like a rainy season where rainstorms come off the Indian Ocean from the southwest. And it's very important to their climate because the majority of their precipitation falls at that time, which is important for farming, not just now, but back in ancient times as well. There's also a dry season too, which happens from like I think around the winter, spring as well. Then they had, of course, what was the first civilization developed in India? Where was it discovered? That, of course, was the Indus Valley Civilization, which is also called Harappan as well. And it was discovered mostly like by the British, although railroad workers, I told you, just found it in the 1850s. And what cities were discovered in the 1920s, which were some of the largest found? They found first Harappa, which they began to excavate in the 1920s. And then the largest they found was Mohenjo-Daro, which both were mud brick cities that I told you about. What types of innovations were famous at these cities? Well, they were known for having like drainage, sewage systems, plumbing. They had like granary sites. They had baths, wells. There was even a citadel that was constructed with it. They had some kind of language system that was called Indus script, was one name they called it. They had also, I think I told you, they worked with metal, like metal work, things like that. And it's mostly an agricultural-based society, like Mesopotamia was. Why did they decline? The two main theories of why they declined was one was, of course, because of climate issues, like the river changed course or something happened with the monsoon. And then the other was the Aryans came in and invaded and conquered it. So you had the Aryan invasion. What culture invaded India? They think the Indo-Aryans or Aryans came in, Aryan people. And these were a type of Caucasian peoples that came out of southern Russia, close to where the Black Sea and Caspian Sea is. And they are very nomadic and warlike people that brought India into the Iron Age. Aryan means, it's a Sanskritic name. It means either freeborn or noble birth, because they came from like an upper class birth. They use that name to differentiate themselves from the lower classes that they conquered, which I guess were the indigenous peoples of India. What type of language religious scripts were brought into India? They introduced Sanskrit to India, which was an Indo-Aryan language. And then the Veda scriptures were brought in, which were the Hindu scriptures that would later develop that religion. The oldest one is called the Rig Veda, R-I-G. It's like 3,000 to 4,000 years old. So it goes way back. Khyber Pass, that was, of course, a main strategic pass that's in the Hindu Kush. It's been a major invasion route, trade route, going all the way back to the time of the Aryans, and others used it like Alexander the Great, etc. What main religion of India was influenced by the Aryans? That was, of course, Hinduism. And it had original names like Sanatana Dharma is what one of the main names that they often called it. But Hinduism has different schools of thought. So it's not just one religion overall. What areas of India is it most dominant? It's predominantly dominant in the Republic of India. They have a majority of people that are Hindu. Hinduism is, like I told you, the third largest religion in the world. 1.25 billion people practice it. And other countries that do have it, but they're not dominant, is, I told you all the other ones, anywhere from Pakistan, Bhutan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and also Indonesia have people that practice Hinduism. Brahman is a religious theological belief on Hinduism. It's this idea that the whole universe is one huge soul, maybe, or everything is part of this soul. Like, not like maybe a supreme being, but I told you it's like the ultimate ground of all being in the universe, and everything's made up of it, whether it be living things, souls, or even non-animate objects, like, like just like anything solid made of anything, like the earth or whatever, and so on. Atman is the idea that living things have a soul, from like humans down to smaller living things. Reincarnation is the belief that all living things go through a cycle of living and dying and being reborn, and then they get reborn again into other living things. Samsara is just the belief that that your soul goes through an internal cycle of reincarnation, which could go forever. What are some things that can affect reincarnation? I told you Dharma is one of the main ones, which are your, ethical, virtual, virtues that you have to follow throughout life as a Hindu or a Buddhist, etc. And then karma is the other one too, as well, which are your actions in life that affect your future, your destiny. Moksha is the belief that over time, that your soul will be released from reincarnation, from the cycle of samsara. And Buddhists often call it, as you know, nirvana. I think Janice called that too, also as well. So anyway, just kind of going through like this short review there, quick review of, what that was about, ancient, like the background of India, getting into, of course, the religion of Hinduism. Later, I'll get more into the religion itself, like the different gods that are part of the religion. I'll also talk about the caste system too. We'll get into that too, which is interesting in India. And I'll also talk about Buddhism, and then I'll get into like later India and talk about Jainism, what that was. And then also we should have time to cover the Mauryan Empire, which develops in India. So, before I go, I want to remind y'all again about the online first exam. Don't forget about it. I have moved it up 2 days to give you more time. I'm trying to finish it. So you do have until, looks like Wednesday, September 30th, midnight to finish. So don't get behind on that, on this assignment, because we're going to be having some others later. I'm probably going to have like, I want to say like maybe Thursday, I'm thinking if I finish India, I might have another Canvas quiz coming up that's going to be on India that I'll have for you overall. Okay. So anyway, don't forget, if anybody does have any questions for me, I am going to put this video up later on my YouTube channel. If you're subscribed to my channel, you will get notifications about it when I do post it. So if you have any comments, questions about it, let me know. Overall, that's pretty much it for today. The only really major big announcement right now, of course, is on the online final, of course. So make sure you try to get that done and all that. So that's it for today. Hope everybody's doing well out there and keeping safe. And I'll see you, of course, on Wednesday. We'll have a 1 o'clock stream as well coming up, but you don't have to attend that if you don't want to, of course. That's if anybody else wants to kind of look at it when I stream it live. But most of you will see this, of course, recorded, of course, later. So y'all take care, and y'all have a good rest of the week as well. So y'all take care. Have a good one.